Welcome to the England pod. We're all England all the time. We've got an England squad to react to. Thomas Tuchel's second of these. 26 players called up for games against Andorra next Saturday in Barcelona. And then Senegal the Tuesday after in Nottingham. I'm Ali Maxwell, got Dave Walker, got George Ellick. And we've got 26 selected names to talk about. And a fair few that have missed out to discuss as well. In goal, we're back down to three keepers. Jordan Pickford, Dean Henderson and James Trafford won the Hunger Games, with Aaron Ramsdale having a break this summer. The fullbacks, we got Kyle Walker, we got Trent Alexander-Arnold back in, we got Reece James, who scored that great goal last time out, and of course Miles Lewis-Skelly, star of the last international camp. The centre-backs, Ezri Konsa and Dan Burn and Levi Colwill are there, and so is Trevoh Chalobah, who could make his England debut over the next few weeks. In the centre of the park, it's Rice, it's Jones, it's Henderson, but it's also Conor Gallagher, who may not have played in the centre of the park much for Atletico Madrid this season, but I'm sure will be earmarked for a central midfield role in an England shirt. He's in, having missed out last time out in the attacking midfield spots. We got Bellingham, we've got Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers retains his spot, Morgan Gibbs-White is in as well and could play in front of those Forest fans at the City Ground. In wide areas, Saka and Madueke off the right, Eza and Gordon off the left, and up front, Harold Kane, Ollie Watkins and Ivan Toney. George Ellick, your reaction to the inclusion of Ivan Toney?
To make something clear before I kind of go in two-footed, I love Ivan Toney. He is someone that I feel a great affinity towards, given, Ali, you and I, our bread and butter is, of course, the EFL. He's someone that I saw play live in the flesh when he was 17 and basically looked like Bambi, playing for Northampton back when he was a teenager. I loved the Brentford team that he was such a massive part of. I love the fact that he got a big move early at a young age, which didn't work out, and still managed to force his way up into the Premier League and into England squads. I felt immense pride watching him score his penalty against Switzerland last summer and play a big part in the comeback win in extra time against Slovakia. So, I love Ivan Toney, and this is by no means in any way, if anything, it's the opposite. It's not a slight on him, but I really hate the fact that he's been selected for multiple reasons. Firstly, from a purely quality perspective, I think we know that the quality of football in the Saudi Pro League is really poor, and there seems to be few people who deny that. Yes, his goal record is immense, but frankly, if Ivan Toney, let's say Ivan Toney had decided to go to Wrexham last season and scored 35 goals in League One, I think we probably would have expected that his England career would have suffered for the decision to move to League One. And yet, in my mind, he's probably gone to a kind of a currency that, at the very, very best, is harder to quantify, but no better than that. And yet, his goal tally is being kind of held up as something positive. There's a bigger, wider issue here, which is that this, in a similar way to how Jordan Henderson's inclusion under Gareth Southgate and actually being made captain, and it felt like Southgate very quickly kind of understood the fan feeling against the Saudi Pro League at that time, and then the fact that Henderson then went to Ajax to try and get his way into the World Cup squad meant that the Euro squad, means I kind of think that Southgate saw the error of his ways. But what this does, in my mind, and Tuchel won't care about this because he's here for a good time rather than a long time, is that this validates any England player's decision to move to the Saudi Pro League. Any concerns that any players might have that accepting a life-changing, career-changing amount of money might have a negative impact on the future of their England international career will go off the back of this, in my mind.
Make it clear why that's a problem for you.
Because I think we need to ensure that we don't have loads of England players, that the best players in the country, the best players that we produce, making a decision to leave elite football in order to chase cash. There's no doubt that if we suddenly see 6 or 8 players that we can expect to be England first team players in the next few years to make the decision, because they'll all be able to. If anyone in this current squad decided they wanted to go in on a lot of money for a short period of time, and I know that they already earn a lot of money, but we have to accept that the money that these guys earn going to Saudi is of a different level. Then
that's not going to happen, though. The floodgates aren't, and the floodgates aren't going to
saying,
suddenly open just because Ivan Toney's got an England call up.
but it doesn't have to be floodgates. It can be two. Let's say over the next 2 or 3 years, you look at this and think, you know what, okay, and then it's where are we in 10 years? And I really think that if we had, I've been behind the Tuchel appointment to an extent. Like, I understand why we've done it. This is, not against him, but there are going to be issues with appointing someone for a very short term view. And in my mind, there's no reason for Thomas Tuchel to have the long-term future of England in the forefront of his mind. Like, he's been brought in to win a World Cup, and he will pick the players he think are best capable of doing that. And I guess to an extent, I can understand why he'd want to at least take a look at Toney, because let's see if he's still a decent player. Let's see if his year in Saudi has negatively impacted his physical condition and his ability to score goals. There's a wider point on sport washing and everything else. And I think that any validation of the Saudi Pro League, whether that is even saying to England players, you know what, you can go there, you can take that coin, and you can still be considered for selection for England squads ahead of a World Cup. I think it's a bad message, and it's a dangerous precipice to fall on. And I'd almost say, being like, it's just one, the floodgates won't open. That's kind of the most dangerous way to think about it, because that's how step by step this thing becomes normalised.
I completely disagree. I think there's no issue with having Toney in the squad. Ali, the other day when we were doing our stance videos, you said, bit tongue in cheek, but to Thomas, don't overthink it. And I think there is a danger of overthinking this. He's got him in the squad, and he's going to have a look at him. He wants to see him close up. He's seen him do what he's done for his team in Saudi, and yeah, you can. Obviously the standard is not the same as it would be if he was playing in the Premier League or in a top European league. But for these games especially, these June internationals, which can often be a little bit different to some of the more regulation camps, get him in, see for yourself close up whether he's still up to it or not. And Ivan Toney, even if he continues to be in the squad between now and the World Cup and goes to the World Cup, he's not going to be a 90-minute man for England, barring some sort of massive injury crisis. He's going to come on in games, play a bit here and there. Can he get on the end of crosses? Can he hold the ball up and get others into play? And if needed, can you take a penalty for us? That's literally all he's ever going to do for England. And why not have a look?
But isn't that so depressing then? It's like, what are we? I think it's impossible not to see a wider picture to what this means and what this kind of.
I think Toney was
the validation of the decision that he made.
The validation of the Saudi League is a bigger picture. Thomas Tuchel's not here to think about that. The FA, haven't got a public stance on that. Southgate was obviously very hot on those sorts of issues, and maybe that had a part in his decision not to pick Henderson for the Euros. But I don't think it's Tuchel's job to be moral arbiter in this situation. And I think Ivan Toney was a particularly, he's a bit of a unique case in that he's nearly 30 and was looking around his options and thinking, no Premier League team's going to come in for me and pay the money that Brentford would want and pay me the wages that I would want. So I'm going to go and take a chance. I'm going to go and take the money. And I don't know whether he was particularly bothered about his England status at the time. He's probably really happy now, but I don't see this leading to a stream of England potential players going to Saudi. I still think you only go to Saudi if you're in that window of late career window and you want to earn some money. And I think Toney's position in the team, that you can get away with doing that, being that player. As I said, he's not like he's a central midfielder that needs to play 90 minutes and have the legs and everything. I think he's a bit of a special case.
There's a footballing discussion to be had. There's a non-footballing discussion to be had. I think the way that everyone, how much importance they place on all of the different things is kind of a personal thing, to be honest. There will be a lot of people thinking it's not that deep, George, and there'll be a lot of people thinking, yeah, spot on. I think that's. I don't think there's a right or wrong. Toney has scored 22 goals, but 9 of them have been penalties. So I want to bring my own flavour to proceedings by saying his goal scoring record's not actually been that good in the Saudi Pro League. He scored 13 non-penalty goals in 29 games. I've watched them all this morning on Scout. The level is frankly laughable. He's scoring tap-ins from 2 yards because someone's dribbled past and squared it to him. He's scoring tap-ins from 2 yards because the centre-back's tripped over the ball and someone has run through and squared it to him. He scored the same number of non-penalty goals as Jorginho Wijnaldum. So I'm pretty torn because I really strongly believe that playing at that level shouldn't be conducive to making an England squad and being considered one of the top 26 players at any given time that we have to play for the nation. I do, though, think that he has a very specialist role on a purely objective footballing level, and if we're only talking about what's important for tournament football next summer so that we can win the World Cup, which is all Tuchel's been hired for and the only thing he's focused on, clearly, as you've said a few times, George, you don't really expect him to try and be a moral arbiter. It's interesting. Elsewhere, Dave, there's no Phil Foden. He's been such a big talking point in England discussions for quite an extended period of time now, when he had a spot in the team and it didn't look like a great fit for him tactically on the left. And he had some chances in the last camp to play in areas that suit him a little bit better. And, you don't get many shots at it and you're being judged very quickly. But it's fair to say he didn't look particularly confident in the last camp as well. He's not had an easy year at all, which he detailed in a recent interview. And he's been taken out of the squad for this one.
Yeah, I was interested to see that interview. I think it was in the Telegraph, wasn't it? And speaking about how he struggled mentally this season, I think with all the various struggles that Man City have had and him not being at his level that he would expect to be at, and also he struggled with a bit of an ankle injury that he picked up in one of the Manchester derbies, the most recent Manchester derby this season. He's clearly, it's been pretty clear to see that he's not been at his best, and we talked about it around the last camp, and Foden was a name that was coming up a lot from people when you were looking at like anyone you think shouldn't be in there, or anyone, is there anyone that maybe you'd like to see someone else given a chance ahead of, and Foden was often that name. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think probably there are a few more players in this squad, which we might get onto, that could have done with a bit of a rest as well, perhaps. So Phil Foden will clearly still have a big part to play for Thomas Tuchel's England. Fitness and physical and mental fitness being well, he'll be in the squad for the World Cup and could even be our best player. Like he's got that in him to be England's best player. He's that talented. But right now, with these games this time of year, I think it's a smart move to give him a bit of a break.
I mentioned as well, the next season for Foden on a club level is like absolutely massive. Like Kevin De Bruyne is leaving Man City, and they are seemingly going to bring in more players in one summer than they have done for a long time. So off the back of an unbelievably disappointing season, I think with the World Cup coming next summer, and he has to find a way to return to the kind of player that we saw the season before last, who was PFA Player of the Year. Like, I think it makes so much sense for him to be taken out of the firing line and be allowed to just have a breather physically, mentally, and just have a bit of time away.
A couple of interesting aspects to this, given what we talked about when we tried to predict the squad a couple of weeks ago. Any concerns that players involved in the Club World Cup, which starts just a few days after the end of this international break, any concerns that they would not be involved, not be called up, were unfounded. Kane is there. All the rest are there, basically. So that was, Tuchel has not sort of kowtowed to what the clubs might have wanted. Alex Howell, excellent BBC Sport journalist who covers England, wrote yesterday that he's not offering any guarantees to Premier League managers on workload either, because he wants to work with as many players as possible for as long as possible. So, as expected, this international camp has chucked up some tension between Tuchel and his priorities and Premier League managers and clubs and their priorities. And David feels like Tuchel, as expected, because he's a strong character, is putting forward that strong character and not making any compromises.
Yeah, and we've already talked about how the game against Andorra and a friendly against Senegal could potentially be a moment to experiment, and it's not the most high pressure, high profile, important match or matches for England, but Tuchel just can't really afford to look at it like that. Like, he was very clear at the last camp about repeatedly making the point about how few days he's got to work with the players between now and the World Cup, and he needs to try and squeeze every last drop out of it, I guess. Thomas Tuchel can't do anything about the packed calendar of world football. He's got a job to do, so fair enough that he picks the players that he wants, regardless of whether they're going to be jetting off to America to play in the Club World Cup a few days after or not.
And loads of players missed out last international break because they were injured and otherwise would have been in the squad. So therefore, with quite a few of them back fit, it's no surprise to see them coming back in and players missing out, by default as a result, in order to make way for the likes of Saka and Watkins and Trent and Palmer and Gordon. So from those who are in the squad who are now not in this one, Rashford injured at the moment, Guehi injured in the FA Cup final. As mentioned, no space for Jarrod Bowen, which I feel a bit bad for Bowen. I don't feel like his performance level this season for West Ham has been anything other than impressive. I don't think that his performances for England have ever, been particularly poor, and you could argue nor have they been hugely sparkling. Pretty tough scene for Dom Solanke, who in the last squad it was just Kane and Solanke as strikers, and yeah, sure, Watkins came back and you'd expect him to go straight in, but obviously the inclusion of Toney over Solanke, is going to be disappointing for him. And then because of Guehi's injury, a centre-back spot's opened up, and it's not gone to Harry Maguire, George. It has gone to Trevoh Chalobah.
Yeah, pretty surprised by this. It isn't really in keeping with the way that I think we've seen Tuchel generally pick his squads, where I think experience for the most part has been valued over promise. And even though I can definitely see why Tuchel would want to have a look at Chalobah, because Maguire was injured in the first squad, he's yet to have a look at Harry Maguire. And in a terrible Manchester United team going through an awful run and an awful season, Maguire has unquestionably been the bright spark for them over the last few weeks, both in terms of his defensive performances, which have been okay from an individual perspective, but also his obvious set piece threat and his ability to get shots away. And the fact that he is someone who, if you were to take out Harry Maguire's club career over the last decade and just looked at his England career, he would probably be seen as one of one of England's best players of the last decade and in recent times. It's only his club form, and particularly the form of the team form of the clubs he's been playing for, that means that he's not probably held in the esteem that he would be, that his performances, especially for the major tournaments, dictate. So I'm pretty amazed that he doesn't get an opportunity here, especially with Stones out injured. Like, you would think, when you look at our centre-back options here, Stones, who would be a starting centre-back, is out. Guehi, who's been a starting centre-back for the last year or so, is out. It feels like an opportune moment to bring Maguire back into the fold. And given that we've seen Tuchel talk about, Henderson's character before calling him up in the last squad, Toney's character and calling him up for this squad, Maguire strikes me as somebody who is that kind of character that you'd want involved. But, maybe not. We don't know that. So I'm pretty surprised to see him come in. It seems like incredibly unlikely to me that Trevoh Chalobah is going to be our starting centre-back in the World Cup next summer. Whereas with Maguire, it kind of feels like he's a good run of form away from doing that. So, I'm just surprised rather than anything. It's good to see a young player get the opportunity to show what they can do, but it's not like there isn't room for Maguire to get a chance here.
Tuchel has actually said already in a video that the FA have put out that Chalobah's form since the last camp has got him into the squad. He said he was on the radar for the first camp, but didn't quite make it. But yeah, exactly. He's one of the 100 on the big long list. It'd be hard not to. Specifically, since the last camp, Chelsea, they're still in contention for the Champions League. Obviously, they're hanging in there, and Chalobah, according to Tuchel, at least has played well. So that makes sense. And I think, we're starting to build a little picture up now of kind of what Tuchel likes and what he doesn't like. And I think he likes achievers. I think he likes people who are playing for teams that are winning stuff and are at the sharp end. And he, say what you will about it, but he even referenced the fact that Toney won the Asian Champions League in his video. Like he clearly cares about people that are winning football matches and getting the job done for their teams, whereas Harry Maguire and Dom Solanke, Solanke might now be part of a Europa League winning squad, but they're, 16th and 17th in the Premier League? And I don't know, I've got a feeling that Tuchel looks at that and just goes, I want players that are at the other end of the table playing for me.
And Chalobah played 31 times under Tuchel when Tuchel was Chelsea manager. Obviously, Chalobah was a very young player at that point, and Tuchel did give him quite a lot of game time. I suppose it's... there are also different types of defender, him and Maguire. If you are making it a straight shootout between those two, with Chalobah, much less of a kind of aerially dominant, meat and potatoes, old school English centre back, more of a Conor type, I would suggest, a reader of the game who'd be better off paired with a more dominant ball winning type, and someone who I think is quite good on the ball. Even if he doesn't have the smooth aesthetics of someone like a Colwill, for example, or a Konza, he doesn't necessarily look quite as sexy on the ball as some ball-playing centre-backs, but I think he's quite an effective passer, Chalobah, and quite a big threat from set pieces, although presumably not quite as big as Harry Maguire, who obviously almost won us the World Cup with his big head from set pieces.
If Chalobah gets his debut cap in either of these two games, that will make him and older brother Nathaniel Chalobah the 21st pair of brothers to play for England. The first pair of brothers to play for England were Charlie and William Clegg in 1872.
Clegg.
What an iconic.
Have there ever been... Nathaniel's a one-cap wonder, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Has there ever been a brotherly one-cap wonder duo?
Point, actually.
Because this feels
do some more
like
research.
I thought you were going to say, Dave, he if he makes his debut, we can expect to interview him on our Capped series in about 12 years' time.
We'll get them both on.
I must admit, there was a part of me that was kind of hoping for just an absolutely bonkers squad here. I was sort of hoping that drama around the Club World Cup would lead to Welbeck up top and Wan-Bissaka in there and Jacob Murphy, who I'm sad we're not going to see, who gave some great quotes in the week, specifically about what he thinks he'd bring to the England team tactically, which I thought was a really nice approach that you don't often see. And we've not seen that. Chalobah, if he plays, is only one of two potential debutants, with the other being James Trafford, who... Dave, as you mentioned, England goalkeepers disproportionately make their debuts in summer friendlies, don't they? So maybe Trafford will get a chance. But then, of course, Henderson is the star of the last 2 weeks of English football discourse himself, with that cap on at Wembley and well, not just with the cap, but with various other aspects of that. So it'll be interesting to see if someone other than Pickford gets a go in goal.
I have to assume Trafford will. I'd be. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them do, and Pickford's the one that comes out for both games. I think, as you kind of alluded to, this is June. If you're going to play Jordan Pickford in both games against Andorra and Senegal, then it seems unnecessary to me. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Trafford plays one and Henderson plays another.
Pickford just to get the rave on.
My cat has just walked across the screen right at the appropriate time when we're talking about the goalkeepers. So
yes.
Fair play.
Get him or her in.
Unfortunately. She can go to Switzerland instead.
We've also got Conor Gallagher in, who, I think he benefits from, and is also a bit of a hindrance for him, his midfield profile. He's been somewhat pigeonholed as just a bit of a terrier who runs and presses and fouls and wins the ball back and brings energy. And I think sometimes that's used as a bit of a knock on him, as if to suggest he doesn't have as much technical quality as others. And I think that can do him a bit of a disservice. But I can't pretend to know a huge amount about his performances, his role, his development, if you like, in Spain playing under Simeone. But I'm really looking forward to... I'm always happy to have Conor Gallagher in the squad for exactly those reasons. And with 26 players, so 23 outfielders, we have to accept, as always, that a lot of the guys we're talking about, particularly the fringe guys, possibly won't see the pitch. There's a chance, Dave, two different 11s entirely for the Andorra match and then for the Senegal match. That wouldn't be out of keeping with how England June fixtures often go. But your face makes me think you think Tuchel might go full strength.
No, I think the fact that the second game's a friendly gives him license to perhaps give a few, give Chalobah and Trafford their debut caps and to maybe use the squad to its fullest extent. And again, the time of year as well. I know he's said about we won't be doing any managers any favours, but I think they will still be conscious of the players' workload and their fitness, and they'll be doing their own work with the players and assessing how fit they are and all that. So I think you do well. I think you'd be disappointed if you're in this squad and you don't get on the pitch, put it that way. Like, there were a few of those in the last camp. Kwanzaa didn't get on the pitch last time. So I think every player should probably get out there this time.
Do you know what, lads? I think it's quite a strong squad. I don't necessarily know why I was particularly expecting something else. I think I just thought it would be a bit messy with all of the different variables and June, summer, Andorra away, friendly after that. But I think it's quite a strong squad, and I'm kind of looking forward to these two games. What else do we need to touch on here, Dave?
I'm quite interested to see Noni Madueke back in the squad. He was one of the more impressive performers under Lee Carsley, I think. Had some good moments in some of those games. Bit under the radar, doesn't get talked about much when we're discussing these sort of England-wide players, but having him in, not necessarily like a direct replacement, but positionally it is, having him in instead of Bowen. Again, I think Tuchel's probably looking at a team that are chasing Champions League and a player that's contributing for Chelsea against a team in West Ham who have had a really disappointing season. Yes, Bowen has still been one of their most impressive performers and has still contributed in terms of his goal involvements. But again, I can kind of see his thinking, and I think it makes sense.
He was also so explicit about what he wants from his wide forwards.
Yeah,
wasn't
exactly.
He? And like Madueke is exactly the profile that he wants. Someone who will just run at their man every single time they get the ball and try and make something happen. And that's something that can frustrate about Madueke, is that what's a knock on him is that his final action isn't always great. He doesn't always shoot at the right time. When he does, he's not an amazing finisher, and sometimes when he gets to the byline, his crossing's not great. But I think wingers like him almost always have that as a knock on them, because they're the sorts of wingers that are trying things all the time, whereas there are other options in the squad who are a bit less direct and don't play like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Saka does in that role as well, because obviously he didn't play in those games. He's a world-class player, but Tuchel's very specific about what he wants from those wide players, and Saka's going to have to do that job.
I think that is another interesting element about this squad, as you mentioned at the top, Ali. The players that were injured last time, and they're some of the biggest and best players we've got: Saka, Palmer, Trent, Watkins to a slightly lesser extent, and Gordon. How's he going to fit those guys into the team? How many minutes are they going to get? What sort of role will Trent Alexander-Arnold play for Thomas Tuchel's England? What positions will he take up? Where's Palmer going to play? Palmer's listed as a midfielder in the squad graphics. Does that mean he plays a bit deeper? Does that mean is he going to be sort of a number 10? Probably not going to be one of the wide players. So yeah, I think there are lots of interesting things. I said the other day on our socials that I want to see Eze start both games. Probably not going to start both games, but I think he should definitely start one of them. And why not the first one against Andorra? He's absolutely flying at the moment. He'll be so confident. I think he's scored 9 in his last 12 games, got 3 assists, scored the winner last week, had the week of his life so far with that FA Cup win, and just seems like an absolutely brilliant man, doesn't he? Yeah.
He's the Dan Burn of this camp.
He is, yeah, absolutely. So I want to, I'd love to see him start off the left, and then maybe we can, use Gordon a bit later or use him in the other game. But yeah, lots of interesting things, I think, in this squad.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that, because you mentioned Eze, because you got Eze who scored the cup final winner, and as you say, is absolutely flying. You got Henderson who put in probably the man of the match performance realistically in that game with the saves that he made to keep Palace in front. they'll be on the crest of a wave. And Ali, you mentioned that Tuchel wants winners and people who are achieving. So there's been quite a lot of surprise online, I guess. Adam Wharton has been left out. Henry Winter tweeted at 10:30, so half an hour or so after the squad was announced. Adam Wharton's one of the best controlling midfielders in English football at the moment. He doesn't give the ball away, something that England have done too often. Bizarre that Wharton's overlooked by Thomas Tuchel. He'll go to under 21 Euros, but Wharton's not a development player anymore. He's ready. He showed that at Wembley, but Tuchel, playing safe in midfield, prefers experience leadership of Jordan Henderson over the creativity and composure of Wharton. Pity. Now, I agree completely with Henry Winter's assessment of Adam Wharton as a player, and I think on merit, both in terms of the ability that he possesses and the profile of player that he is in his form at the moment, he absolutely deserves a place in this squad. But I have to assume, rather than this being a snub and Carsley picking up the pieces, that it's a calculated decision for Wharton to go to the Euros. Like it would seem absolutely wild to me that Thomas Tuchel, he would be so aligned with his decision making to include him in the squad. That the view is, he's a talent. He's already been in England squads in the past. Let's get him some more major tournament experience this summer and bring him into the fold after the summer's over. Because if that's not the case and he has been overlooked, then I think that's a clanger, to be frank. And I definitely agree. I think the more minutes that Wharton can play, it is a matter of time until Adam Wharton is as much of a mainstay in England first 11 as Declan Rice is. Like, they are going to both be the automatic picks for England very, very soon. Rice obviously already is. Wharton will become that alongside him. I've got no doubt about that. The more time we can, the earlier that happens, the better, in my view. But at the same time, I do think surely this is a decision that's been made in terms of bringing Wharton on for next summer rather than Tuchel deciding that he's not up to it.
Yeah, the under-21s squad will be announced this afternoon. It's the training squad for the Euros, which are still quite a few weeks away, and then it'll be tightened up. I think it's on the 6th of June. Carsley will announce his final squad. So we'd expect to see Wharton, we'd expect to see Delap, and that's obviously important context for when we're talking about their non-inclusion in this squad. I wonder if we might see Rico Lewis as well in that squad. That'll be interesting to see. Of course, Madueke is still eligible for the under-21s, which seems kind of crazy. Trafford is still eligible. Sorry?
Is Livramento eligible?
Livramento is also still eligible for the under-21,
okay.
So that will be interesting to see if he makes his way into that squad. I dare say that Jarrell Kwanzaa is also eligible for that under-21 squad. So, Carsley's got almost as tough a job as Tuchel, trying to get all these players in, some of which haven't been working with the rest of the 21s group for quite some time because they've been involved in the senior squad. So there's a lot of intrigue around that 21 squad, which will be announced this afternoon. One quote from Tuchel's press conference, just to bring up before we leave, is, "We start the camp with 26 and we finish the camp with 26. I could see the value in letting the players leave earlier with Club World Cup players, and we discussed not having Club World Cup players, but we understood it is important as one of only 5 camps that we need to cherish it." All of this discussion, Dave, is coming back to Tuchel's stubborn obsession, and why not, with the fact that he hasn't got a lot of time and he is the England manager and his job is to bring these players in to play for England to challenge for the World Cup next summer, and nothing else matters to him.
Yeah, of course, and why would it? He said there, we start the camp with 26 players, we finish the camp with 26 players. I wonder whether the 26 players that finish the camp might be different from the ones that have been named today, because we have still got the final round of matches in the Premier League to go this weekend. Wouldn't surprise me if 1 or 2 pick up knocks or are carrying knocks and pull out next week. It happens quite often. So there may well yet be room for a couple of those players that we've talked about who have missed out to sneak into the squad.
Andorra away on Saturday in Barcelona, Senegal at home the following Tuesday in Nottingham. We're all England all the time, which means we'll be covering those games, we'll be reacting to those games, while also we've got the under-17s at the Euros. We'll have a pod on the feed next week looking back at the group stage. We've got Lionesses playing games in the next couple of weeks as well. Be reacting to those. June is going to be jam-packed full of under-21s Euros, under-19s Euros, and these men's senior games too. And then July, all about the Lionesses in Switzerland at the Euros. So this is, for us, about to get super exciting. One season, the club season may be ending, but the international season absolutely peaks over the next couple of months. And so please make sure that you're tuned into the England pod, subscribe to the feed, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on socials, and just get involved, because we're really looking forward to it. Thank you for listening to this squad announcement reaction, and we'll chat to you again soon. Cheers, go well.